Mario and Anoosh, really looking forward to diving into your predictions around cybersecurity. Thank you so much for being with us today. To start with, how do we make sure Gen AI is deployed securely? Mario, let's start with you.
Oh, that's a loaded question. I think the best thing you need to begin with is to use an analogy, for example. I had a friend of mine who his kid had just turned 21, and she was really excited. And this is a time when you started using Facebook, etc. And she was so excited, she took a picture of her driver's license with all the contents in it and showing that she had just turned 21 and she was also a driver's license and started drinking legally. Wow. And she just posted on public internet for everybody to see, quite honestly. And you start thinking about that and the implications behind that. You actually have your driver's license, a lot of information that bad people want to have. And yes, because the technology is there for you to use that, uh, doesn't necessarily mean you should be putting in that kind of data for the public to see. So always begin with, do I want this information to be seen by the rest of the world?
I love that perspective. Thank you so much, Mario. Anoosh, would love your thoughts as well on the matter.
Absolutely. Like Mario said, start with thinking about your data, but also the fact that at the end of the day, these models are software and they're subject to the similar security model that we know of, right? And I would say the first stepping stone in that direction is making sure that you deploy your model in a secure infrastructure. So I would say the first thing to be concerned about is the infrastructure that runs this model and making sure that they're secured based on best practices.
Thank you, gentlemen. We have a great baseline. Now let's dive into it. What impact do you see this technology having on threat detection, Anoosh?
Yeah, I can go first. I think there's a short term and there's a long term answer to that. I think the short term answer, and we start seeing lots of demos around this, are around more natural experience with interacting with the security devices and models. You can imagine things like Copilot or things that could help simplify the way that a security engineer needs to extract information to make decisions, right? It can also be used for other things that may be time consuming today. For example, creating playbooks on how to respond to a security incident based on previous experiences, providing some kind of frequently asked questions for customers to ask security questions and not having to go through a long set of conversation with support. And I would say when it comes to mid-range or long-range conversation, this is where we start seeing AI helping customers deploying better configuration and kind of lowering the bar on or the load on the security team. Imagine a new employee wanting to start a role in a marketing team. The AI can help recommending certain roles that the user have to be productive. And I would say that's another angle that AI can bring to the play.
Thank you, Anoosh. And Mario, from your perspective, how will it help the broader security teams?
Well, I do want to piggyback on the short term and longer term. And I think short term, think of the next 12 months and then 24 months. And right off the bat, the way that these models are going to help is to augment some of the things that are repeatable today, manual work. Just to piggyback on what Anush is saying, look, even when a security analyst has to look for a particular event or search a particular event, you have to type it. You have to say, I need to select from X to do that. And if you see this behavior, alert me, I would do a graph. Well, that takes a lot of work, typing, quite honestly. Wouldn't it be easier if the models could actually auto populate the common things that you see in SQL or in Python or whatever programming language you have, and just include those things for you? That in itself will accelerate a lot of the searches that you would manually do. So, or even the writing of the code that you'd normally do in threat detection. That takes a lot of time. But if you can reduce that, you make your analysts more efficient.
I think efficiency is going to be key. Thank you, Mario. Every technology advance both gives the bad guys new ways to attack and the good guys new ways to defend. Will Gen AI upset that balance? I'd love both of your takes on this one. Mario, why don't you kick us off?
Yeah. Um, the state of security attacks today and the bad guys, why are they motivated? And there's many reasons why. But the vast majority, somewhere around 90 to 95% of the security attacks today are driven by money, right? There's an economic thing. Why are these attackers doing it? Because they want to make money, right? They either want to do some ransomware, they want to gain something that they eventually get some economic value. In fact, there are now organizations, bad organizations, that build these tools and make it easier and sell it to their customers who also want to do bad things. But they're not these tool manufacturers. They're kind of like companies. They have customer support. They have tech support. They help their customers learn about the tools, so the customers can then use them to attack. And so what you're going to see, let's not go so fancy. For the next 12, 24 months, are people going to start poisoning models to infect the data and the results of data? Yeah, maybe. But I think what's mostly going to happen initially is they're going to make better attacks. They're going to make them smarter. They're going to make it. Think about those phishing attacks we get today. Think about how easy some really simple email from a prince from Nigeria that needs your help, how often that actually works. Well, that's really simple stuff. Now imagine power charging that with some Gen AI with the bad guys using those tools. It's going to get really interesting really quickly, because now these attacks are going to sound, look, and even discuss things like it's me or Anoosh or even you. That's going to make it harder for the person on the other side to even know, I think that's Mario. Yeah, sure, I'll click on that.
I want to stick with this concept of bad actors a little bit longer. As we've discussed throughout this program, Gen AI and LLMs allows non-technical individuals the ability to do more. Anoosh, from your perspective, does this increase the number of bad actors now entering into the arena?
Absolutely. Like Mario said very nicely, what Gen AI does for attackers is it allows them to scale their software development to be able to produce these kind of toolings that can be used for a potential attack easier. So previously, to me, actually, security is a financial game, right? As an attacker, I evaluate how much does it cost to build the tooling to attack the system versus the gain I get by attacking it, right? What Gen AI can do is to lower the cost of development, which allows the attacker to build more and more tooling for more use cases that may not be interesting for them today because the cost of development today is high. But with Gen AI, that goes down, and so more tooling means that more players can enter the game and use these toolings to actually mount the attack. So I definitely see this as a kind of a scaling the kind of use cases that were not meaningful for an attacker.
And if I could just add comment to that, think of it, as we're familiar with SaaS as a product, as a technology. Think of it as malware as a service that already exists today. And now all you're going to do is you're going to add more intelligence to your malware as a service using these Gen AI models.
Thank you, gentlemen, for your collective insights on that. On the topic of changing threat vectors, you say in the report that the success of DevOps and DevSecureOps are leading bad guys to shift left on their targeting. Why are new dev environments the new hot target, Mario?
It's always been there. I mean, the reality has always been the case. And why? Well, why now? Well, a couple of reasons. First of all, with this whole shift left, and basically you're not doing manual configurations or making changes in production by a human being manually anymore. Most of the stuff has been, Terraform, so you can build infrastructure via Terraform. You don't have to go and have a human being touch all the knobs and digits that you would have in production. So a lot of the stuff is now being codified in a dev environment. Now, what's wrong with dev environments? Well, it's not that there's anything wrong with them, but there's just a lot of less predictability in a dev environment. Why? Well, because I want to test a new software package that I'm going to be releasing as part of my feature. Well, you're not going to do that in prod. You're going to do that in dev. That, in its sense, creates a lot of uncertainty. It makes it hard from a security perspective to know what's normal and what's not normal, right? If Anoosh yesterday was playing around with one tool, but today he downloads an additional tool just for work purposes, well, how do I know that that's actually legitimate or not? So the attackers know that. And what the attackers are doing now is laser focusing in the dev environments, in that whole CI/CD, and putting in their bad code or compromising that environment so then it manifests itself in production.
Thank you, Mario. Gentlemen, such a pleasure exploring your predictions around all things cybersecurity. Before we wrap here today, what advice would you like to give to the audience watching? And as you both look out on the coming year, what will your primary focus be? Anoosh, why don't we start with you?
For sure. I would basically conclude the way I started. At the end, these models are still software. And the best practice is to follow what has been, instrumented in the industry for the longest time about supply chain security, right? The question starts with observability, knowing what runs in your environment, and also have a policy about what should be the right behavior. So, for example, what are the allowed LLMs that can be running in your environment, and making sure that the developers who are using it are actually doing so, and also having things in system that allows you to detect policy violation and have systems that can react to it. Those are, again, well-established principles that we have had for decades, and they should be transferred to the model. And at the same time, with LLM comes perhaps new attack surfaces that may not be viable in a traditional software. And there is a wide range of research being done, and those principles are being developed. But like Mario said, those may come next. The kind of attacks that we should, and customers should be ready for the next 12 to 24 months is really making sure that they have a solid ML ops in place where they can guarantee about authenticity of the models they use, and that they match the regulatory requirements that the customer is subject to.
Thank you, Anoosh. And Mario, from your perspective, as you look out on the coming year, what's top of mind?
Look, we're going to start telling our employees not to be using LLMs that are public or outside of your area of control. In doing so, and that's the right thing to do, by the way, you have to do that. But in doing so, we have to provide our employees with the services, capabilities that are acceptable, that are governed by your company. So you have to give them a secure way of doing these models or testing these models and using LLMs, for example. And to me, the biggest guiding principle is, why move your data to those LLMs outside of your company? Move those LLMs closer to wherever your data is at. And if you have a central place where all these data is at, that's well governed, force those LLMs, provide those LLMs, those Gen AI solutions closer to your data.
Very much Snowflake's ethos of bringing the compute to the data. Gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us here today. A fascinating conversation.
Thank you.
Thank you.